Hey everyone, so I have a Counterpoint webinar coming up on September 8th and I wanted to let you know about it. It's completely free, it's very low key, it's just going to be fun, and we're going to go over some really important concepts in Counterpoint. I want to kind of give you an overview for why Counterpoint's important and how it can change your understanding of music. I hear this all the time. I hear people say, well, why study counterpoint? I don't want to write like Bach. Yeah, you're not going to write like Bach if you learn to write 16th century counterpoint. What it's going to do is it's going to show you the principles that did work for like 400 years and that still work in tonal music today. With the popular music you listen to, a lot of music that we listen to uses counterpoint on some level. It's really difficult not to. But when you study sort of these ancient techniques, because they really are ancient, they're getting to be ancient at this point, you are learning principles that can be applied to a composition in a very fluid way. And so I want to give you some examples of how that can actually occur. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that today. I'm going to actually show you how you can take kind of a skeleton of an idea and turn it into something crazy. Okay? So I'm doing this because part of my mission here is to provide as much free information and content as I can, because I know that most of you are just here to have fun. It's entertainment. You want to learn something, and I want to provide that for you. It actually is meaningful for me to be able to provide this information. So we're going to talk about what I'm going to go over in the Counterpoint webinar and what you stand to gain by taking a few moments to actually attend this webinar. So the first thing I want to tell you, just a reminder, it's going to be on September 8th. If you sign up for it, there's no obligation. You'll get the replay after. But as of right now, I think I'm just going to keep it on my website for reasons which I can explain at a later time. It's just, this is something that I want to do often, and I don't think I want to kind of crowd the channel with Counterpoint webinars, and that's kind of my logic behind it. So one of the things that Counterpoint does, have you ever kind of sat at a piano, you've come up with a really great melody, and now you're like, okay, how do I create chords that fit? So maybe you've watched my other video, The Musical Skeleton, right? Where I show you how you can look for keynotes in a melody and extract chords from there. And then you have a melody with a chord structure underneath it, so it provides harmony. But what if you want a piece that's more than just basic chords and melody? I mean, that can get pretty boring after a while, and it's not true composition, because at that point, you're just extracting chords from a melody, putting them down, creating this harmonic pad, and that's like step one. That is really just step one of creating a composition. So what Counterpoint teaches you is how to manipulate those chords so that they sound good with your melody. And now what you've done is you've created a composition where each time somebody listens to it, sometimes they hear the melody. And then if they listen to it 3 or 4 times, then they hear an inner line they never heard before. And it's its own melody that sounds amazing in its own right. Imagine creating a composition that is composed of 4 different melodies, 3, maybe 4 melodies, and they all sound beautiful in their own right. That's what Counterpoint teaches you how to do. And yeah, we teach it in a very simple way. We teach it at first in 16th century style. But once you understand the principles, you can then apply those principles to any music you want to write. Now, if you're doing Stockhausen or you're John Cage and you're having somebody go through New York City in the middle of the day and following a particular map and turning at certain destinations, then I actually still believe the principles of Counterpoint can help you even then, because Counterpoint is really just about taking an idea and displaying it in the best way possible through comparisons. So if I have a melody, bum ba dum bum 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 bum, right? I have that melody. How do I create something that supports that melody? How do I create a contrasting melody that allows me to compare the two? Or how do I make the piece more interesting? Maybe one of the inner lines becomes its own melody. We're going to talk about all of this. We're going to show you how you can take these melodies and these chords and these harmonies that you've been working with, and how you can make them so much better. I'm really going to try and show you how all of this goes together, and we're going to do this in the webinar on September 8th, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I really hope a lot of you can attend, because it'd be so much more fun if there were more people there. But I understand schedules and all that. So if you can't make it, just register. You'll get the replay, and you can always ask me questions after. We're going to talk about the 5 species. What you see below me is just first species, and this is a pretty good example of what counterpoint could look like. Now, there are problems with this selection here. The lower line in the first counterpoint example, it's very boring. It just goes up and it comes back down. So we would want to make that a more interesting line. The top line is pretty good. It has a high point and it has a nice direction, a nice contour. It might even eventually be a very nice melody. But this is what first species essentially looks like, barring any issues with the counterpoint itself. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how first species becomes second, becomes third, becomes fourth, and eventually fifth species, where you're combining all 4 species of counterpoints into one cohesive composition that's really interesting to listen to. So what does species mean? Very briefly, species just means type. So there's types of counterpoint and there's stages. So you master first species, then you master second, then you master third, and they get progressively more interesting as you go. And then you master fourth, and then you master fifth, and then you learn how to write for 3 parts and 4 parts. And it's this comprehensive system that really changes the way you think about music. It fixes the musical logic in your brain, and you can start writing more intuitively when you learn counterpoint in the correct way. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the webinar. I'm going to show you the proper way to learn counterpoint, because so often we don't learn counterpoint properly. So how do you take something like this here, and I'm going to play an example of it for you. That's a very simple melody with a harmony. This is what I see a lot of composers do in the beginning when they first start studying with me. They will bring me these really nice melodies, and then they'll have a harmony supporting it. How many of you are doing this? How many of you are just plunking down a harmony and then getting a melody to fit? And then maybe you add some passing tones and you do some things to the harmony to make it a little more interesting. If you're doing that, this webinar is going to really help you, because I'm going to show you how you can go from this. I'm not just going to show you the transformation. I'm going to show you how you go from this to this. This is actually a Haydn piece. See if any of you recognize it. That is the same melody from the previous slide, from the previous example, and it's using the same exact chords, but it's so much more interesting now. And it's not like you can just simply say, okay, I'm going to change the rhythm of my harmony and then it will fit. This rhythm fits the melody, and it fits for a very particular reason. And typically when you learn counterpoint, you don't necessarily learn how the rhythmic aspect of it comes into play. But we're going to talk a little bit about how important rhythm actually is as well. So I'm going to show you how to go from that simple chord progression to something more interesting like this melody here by Haydn. So I hope you can register. It's going to be on September 8th. I don't even care. Use a fake email address, whatever you have to do. All you have to do is go to UreMusic.com. Right on that homepage, you're going to see a registration link. I think it just requires an email address. Use a fake email. I really don't care. As long as you can get in, access the trainings. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope a lot of you can join me.